None of the favorites in the history of the French monarchy had such absolute power as Diane de Poitiers. For the 12 years that Henry II reigned, it was she who held the reins of power. None of them was more than 20 years older than the king, and Diana was. Diana de Poitiers. She was predicted at birth in 1499 that she would rule over everyone. Her contemporaries called her the blossoming flower of beauty. She was much older than the king, and yet she won his heart forever. But the most amazing thing is that her beauty was timeless. Chronicler of court life under Catherine de Medici wrote, "I saw Diana when she was 65 years old, and could not marvel at her beauty. All the charms shone on the face of this rare woman. I think, live this lady 100 years, she still has not grown old." Contemporaries even suspected that she made a deal with the devil. Our contemporaries Diana de Poitiers may not seem beautiful, but at that time she really was the standard of female beauty. The basic parameters were as follows: white skin, teeth and hands black, eyes and eyebrows red, lips, cheeks and nails long, body, hair and fingers short, teeth, ears and feet narrow, mouth, waist and ankles full, hands, hips and calves small, nose, chest and head. How did it happen that Henry II, with a huge choice of court ladies and a wife the same age as him, dreamed of a woman who was beautiful but almost 20 years older than him? When Henry's father, King Francis I, was imprisoned by Charles V to gain his freedom, he promised to give his sons, the Dauphin Francis and his younger brother Henry, Duke of Orleans, as hostages. The two boys, ages 7 and 9, were to go to an unknown land to their enemies for an indefinite period of time. During the farewell, no one paid attention to little Henry. Everyone supported the future king, his older brother. All except Diana de Poitiers. She was 27 years old at the time. She had two daughters, 5 and 8 years old. She approached 7-year-old Henry, leaned over, kissed him gently on the cheek and said, "You have to hang in there. We'll be waiting for you. I will wait for you." The captivity lasted a long 4 years. Henry had a very hard time there. But he read chivalric novels and remembered Diana, with her kiss. He would later say, "I survived captivity only to return to you." Francis I managed to get his sons back, in exchange for a colossal ransom, 2 million gold écus, or about 4.5 tons of gold. Diana and her husband joined those who helped raise this sum. Henry returned to find Diana even more beautiful. He is 12 years old, she is 31. Henry wins his first jousting tournament at age 12 and bows the banner to Diana, calling her Lady of his Heart in public. 3 months later, Diana's husband of 43 years dies, and she wears the sign of mourning, only black and white colors, until her death. Francis I asked Diana to play along with young Henry. Cursed captivity, the boy has forgotten how to smile. A drop of lively flirtation is all I ask. And Diana gladly played along with Henry's platonic advances. Time marches on. Henry marries a woman of the same age, Catherine de Medici, a representative of a powerful Florentine house, a distant relative of Diana. At the time of their marriage, they are both 14 years old. Behind the eyes, he calls Catherine Toad. The girl tried to please, spoke French with a bright Italian accent. But Henry's passion for Diana does not pass. Moreover, Diana herself begins to like more and more rapidly growing up teenager, younger than her own daughter. And then the unexpected happens. Henry's older brother, the future King of France, suddenly dies. From that moment a black shadow falls on Catherine for the first time, a suspicion of poisoning. Henry becomes the Dauphin and the second figure after his father. Diana becomes close to him, in every sense. She is 36, Henry is 17. His wife is also 17. It all ends with even Diana herself, struck by Dauphin's ardor, falling in love with him. It is then that Henry draws a monogram by his own hand, which seems to symbolize his marriage to Catherine de Medici. In fact, all the letters in it are lined up so that it reads D, the first letter of Diana's name. Soon this monogram appears with his personal arms, then on all his castles and even on the royal mantle. The heir to the throne calls her his lady and inundates her with passionate poems. Alas, my God, how I regret the time lost in my youth. How many times I dreamed that Diana would be my only mistress. But I feared that she, being a goddess, would not stoop so low. It would be 11 years from the death of his beloved older brother to the death of his hated father. Henry would become King of France, and he will find himself at the center of a love triangle between two stunning women. Diane de Poitiers, his muse, his mentor, his lover, and Catherine de Medici, his lawful wedded wife and mother of his children. How did their relationship work out? Why did Diana want Catherine to have children with Henry? Why didn't the Medici, the great poisoner, put something in Diana's glass? It seems that this trio came together and worked out a system of mutually beneficial coexistence, thus surprising everyone at court. The 17-year-old Medici's position at court was precarious. Pope Clement died unexpectedly, and half of the huge dowry remained unpaid. Naked. This girl came to me completely naked, considered the king, Henry's father. The de Guises begin to tell Francis about young Louise de Guise. What a dowry she has. But Catherine doesn't want to divorce and leave. She loves Henry. She has dreams of his death. Her daughter, the same Queen Margot we know from Dumas novels, said that every time her mother was about to lose someone from her family, she saw a huge flame in her dream. There's a legend that she started dreaming about Henry before she even met him. A dying man lying there begging to be saved. The first time she sees Henry, she recognizes the man from her recurring dream and takes it as a sign of destiny. If she leaves, who will save Henry? And Catherine throws herself on her knees before Francis with the words, "I understand. I'm ready for a divorce. Just leave me with Henry. I love him so much." The distraught king promises that under his reign there will be no royal courts over their divorce. There is another problem. Years go by, and Catherine and Henry have no children. And this is more serious than the lack of a dowry. Catherine was not a beauty. Too large mouth, large but completely colorless eyes. That's what one ambassador wrote about her. Some even claim that she was an exact copy of Pope Leo X. And at 20, looking like the Holy Father is no compliment. Sorcerers began suggesting she try the ashes of a burnt frog and the urine of a mule. Other experts advised her to wear a belt made of goat's hair at all times, and to wash herself with the milk of a donkey. Defina agreed to everything, but all was to no avail. The royal council immediately recommended that the king send this barren womb back to Italy. It was then that Diana resolutely came to Catherine's defense and saved her from exile. And Defina became a spy in gratitude. She was soft, kind and obliging to everyone. Everyone smiled, everyone tried to please. And in the evenings she reported to her dear patroness about everything she had learned during the day. Diana finds good doctors for Defina and persuades Henry to perform the necessary operation. She is the one who takes care of Henry's regular visits to the marital bedroom. Why would she do that? It is very simple. The biggest danger for Diana was the threat of Henry's divorce, as a new wife could put an end to her influence. After the birth of her first son, pregnancies followed one after another. In total, Catherine had 10 children, just as the astrologers had predicted. Of these, 7 survived. And among them were 3 future kings and 2 future queens. For this help, Henry, after becoming king, gave Diana a huge reward for good useful services previously rendered to the queen. Catherine de Medici's life for the next 12 years revolved in a vicious circle. Conception, nurture, childbirth. Barely born, the children were removed from their mother's care and supervision, as their father entrusted them to his mistress, who was to be in charge of their upbringing and education. Francis I died in 1547, the day his son Henry was born. He thus made him a royal gift, giving France to Henry and his wife Catherine de Medici. At this point, they are each 28 years old, and his mistress Diane de Poitiers is 47. For a woman, that's a very respectable age. But for Diana, it's the age when the cornucopia tipped over. So Henry became king, and Diana became the most powerful woman in France. The new sovereign spared no diamonds, no forests, no fields, no castles, no vast sums of money for the beauty. Diana became the Duchess de Valentinois. She put her friends in the council of the king and held the rudder of the ship in her hands. What was he like in life, this man who was incapable of living away from his Diana? The Venetian ambassador, describing Henry, who was 33, said, "His constitution is mighty, and therefore a great lover of bodily exercise. The king is distinguished by such obvious natural kindness that in all respects no prince can be compared to him, even if you look for one in times extremely remote. No one sees him in anger, except sometimes, when hunting, when something unfortunate happens. And even then, the king does not use harsh words. And so it can be said that because of his character, he is indeed very beloved." The life of the three of them continued. The king, according to one diplomat, reported to Diana on current affairs of state, was interested in her opinion on the draft of a new tax, on the content of the next conspiracy being prepared, or on the answer to be given to a foreign diplomat. Madly in love with the king, Catherine eventually became close to Diana and established an almost friendly relationship with her. Both women continued to smile and portray a sincere friendship. Meanwhile, the queen had to endure many humiliations. Even on the day of her coronation, Diana stood next to her, in an ermine-trimmed pelerine. And from the outside, not everyone could have guessed which one of them was the queen. And during the ceremony the crown was too heavy for the queen, and one of Diana's daughters took it off Catherine's head and put it at her mother's feet, on a velvet cushion. The queen did not raise an eyebrow. Nothing seemed to touch her. However, in fact, Catherine de Medici did not find a place of impotent anger. Her real attitude to the impostor was difficult to hide. One day Diana innocently asked, "What are you reading, madam?" "I read the history of France," nonchalantly replied Medici, "and discovered that at all times, whores have run the affairs of kings." Wanting to understand why the king favored this woman, fit to be his mother, the queen made several holes in the ceiling of the room favorite and began to observe their intimate life. After watching this performance, the queen sighed and sobbed and moaned, noting for herself that her husband did not allow himself in the marital bedroom of such madness, as with the favorite. Almost 30 years later, Catherine de Medici wrote to one of her daughters, "I welcomed Madame de Valentinois, because the king forced me to do so, and at the same time I always made her feel that I do so to my greatest regret, for never a wife who loves her husband will not love his whore." Henry idolized Diana, writing letters if he did not see her even for a day. Diane de Poitiers became the richest and most powerful woman in France. But in 1559, at the age of 40, Henry died, wounded in a tournament, fulfilling verbatim the prophecy of two astrologers, one of whom was Michel Nostradamus. Catherine de Medici would again amaze everyone. At her wedding she wore heels and fashioned them, and at her husband's death she would wear black mourning, not white as was the custom of queens, and choose as her coat of arms a broken spear with the inscription, "From this are all my tears and my pain." And she will begin her transformation into the dreadful Black Queen she has become in history. She will wear black mourning for the rest of her long life. And Diana is 59 years old at this point. Medici orders that Mother Poitiers never appears at court again. Saddened, she decides to leave the banks of the Loire and goes to her chateau in Anais, a temple worthy of her beauty. The walls of the castle were painted with scenes depicting Diana on the hunt. What is the secret of the incredible youth of Diana de Poitiers, who became a favorite, being 20 years older than the king? Diana herself told a story about an old wicked man, who saved her from death as a child, and the elixir of eternal youth received from him in gratitude. This is what the historian Hybreton writes. When women were already considered old women in their 30s, such a thing seemed amazing. That's why there were rumors of a potion. But in fact, the recipe for long youth and beauty Diana de Poitiers looked like this. The main thing, it's good genes. Diana is from an ancient family, more noble and ancient than the royal family of Valois. This family had its own family laws. Always have a decent appearance, to be cool and confident in her address, to look modestly, to speak softly, to be unchanging and calm at all times, never backing down from a decision. It turns out that Diana had an inner support and upbringing that helped her to make the right decisions. And then there is the daily regimen and common sense. Diane said to Pierre Brantôme, who was astonished by her appearance when she was already nearly 70, "There is nothing surprising about it. I get up at 6 a.m. and take a cold bath, then I get on a horse and go hunting deer. At 8 I return and lie down for a short rest. I have a light breakfast and lunch. For dinner, I eat something dairy. But the most important thing is this. Every day you must do something pleasant and fall asleep joyfully, without holding heavy thoughts in your mind." Moreover, she hardly used cosmetics and did not consume alcohol, not even when the king asked her to. The secret of her beauty resurfaced again several years ago, when it was discovered that the gold content in Diane de Poitiers' remains was 250 times higher than normal. Clearly, the woman had regularly consumed drinks containing gold particles. Such an elixir of youth may have been prescribed by alchemists, who believed that the noble metal had rejuvenating effects. Perhaps this was what caused the premature death of King Henry II's favorite, a theory strongly supported by pathologist Philippe Charlier, who studied her remains. There is evidence that several months before her death, Diane's face had become very pale, which may have been a symptom of anemia caused by gold poisoning. During her lifetime, she was visited by Brantôme, a nobleman who later left behind fascinating memoirs. He wrote, "I saw this woman 6 months before her death. She was still so beautiful that no heart, even one as hard as stone, could remain unmoved. I am certain that if this lady had lived another 100 years, she would not have aged, neither in face nor body. A pity the earth has hidden this magnificent body from us." He offered her a large sum of money for her youth elixir and promised to keep it a secret. But Diane simply said, "Daily routine, ice-cold water, riding on horseback, and peaceful thoughts." Half a year later, she died at the age of 66. Diane left a will. 5 days after her death, her body was to be brought to the tomb at Ainet, and her heart buried next to her husband's. Perhaps she had completed all her earthly matters. The earth preserved that beautiful body untouched for nearly 2 centuries. Only during the French Revolution did the sans-culottes break into her tomb, open the coffin, and expose Diane's body to the public. It had been remarkably well preserved. Her corpse was thrown into a cart, and then those barbarians divided among themselves the locks and braids of the incomparable woman who, through nothing but charm and skill, managed to bend the power of the French monarchy to her favor. Thus ended one of the most remarkable stories of love, power, and political balance in the history of France. A union held together against all logic, age, public opinion, and the laws of court, yet built on deep respect, passion, and perhaps a childhood wound that forever bound Henry to the woman who gave him strength when he was most vulnerable. And yet, which of them truly went down in history as great? Diane, the woman adored by a king, who ruled France from the shadows of love? Or Catherine, the woman whose patience, intelligence, and political acumen transformed her from the little Italian frog into the queen mother of 5 monarchs? History doesn't rush to answer. It simply reminds us that real power often hides behind the curtains, in the loving hands of a woman who knew how to rule a king's heart.